This week we discuss targets versus goals, setting specific targets and closing loopholes, and how to use search ads to improve your app's title.
So this week we're gonna mostly share our goals, but like what is our format most weeks then once we have like our goals set?
Okay, so this week, we'll go through our goals. We'll get straight on that and work out what we're going to kind of achieve over the next 12 weeks. And then week by week, we will set goals for the current week. And then the week after, we'll see how we got on with those goals and just discuss it and kind of keep ourselves kind of accountable and on track and just make sure that everything is going according to plan. And if it's not, then to really help each other out and just be a shoulder for each other, kind of I think a bit of a carrot and a stick is the idea for each other.
Right, because the whole point is we don't want to be like 3 months from now and like not have completed the things we want to complete, right? The whole point is to be tracking as we go so that we actually get these things done and we identify problems as they occur.
Exactly, yeah. So today we'll set our kind of targets, so what we're going to head towards in the next kind of over the next 12 weeks, and then each week we'll just check back against those targets and make sure that is where we're going.
Perfect. And I'm trying to have Trello open on my phone so that I can actually like keep seeing your face and not like do that thing, where when you're on a video and your like eyes are looking down and you look like you're not even there.
Yeah, this sounds good. I've got it up over the top, so I'm just going to be not looking at you.
Perfect.
So sure, do you want to go first? So we've got 3 goals each. So the idea is we've got 3 goals each that should be achievable within the 12 weeks. And I think that was the only kind of rules really.
Right.
If we go...
And I think we also said we wanted to make sure that or maybe my own personal rule was that the goals should hopefully not overlap each other. Like if you have something that's like coding, you don't want to have 2 coding goals so that like one would compete with the other, like kind of discrete parts of your brain or discrete parts of like the app development process.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly the goals don't have to be just coding as well. So or the kind of same as that. So the goals are broad and we can go through them now. So hit me with your first goal.
Okay, well, I will hit you with my most broad goal, and it is my only coding goal, and it is to basically build an iPhone game. You and I have talked a bunch about how like a game is like my white whale in the app development world. Like it is both the thing I've wanted to do for the longest and the thing that I am most scared to do, but it's also the thing that I want to take all the things, we did in the podcast so far and all the experiments we've learned and all the things that I know about in-app purchases and other things. And I kind of want to apply all of this information into like this nearly perfect creature, So like, it's something that I can be really proud of, but it's also something that I can obviously like, market well and know how the income will work rather than like building an app I like for myself that might be a niche app, that nobody really needs or wants.
Okay. And so you think that it is, so tell me a little bit more about what the game will be and basically why you think you can build a game in 12 weeks.
Exactly. So this is the hardest part of that. And I tried to break this down when I was writing it out. I'm thinking I can make my goal maybe a tiny bit more narrow and I can say the first version of this game, like let's say like a feature complete version of this game that might not be exactly what I would want it to be in its final version, but definitely something that maybe like App Store ready, I guess would be the right word.
Okay. But so I was going to say, so would it be good to change it from build an iPhone game to release an iPhone game, or would it be fair to say? So
that's a good point.
Is that your goal to release it within the 12 weeks, or is it to be? Where does it?
My honest goal is to just like actually dive in and do it. So I'm unsure. I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously you and I both know that like we can build a terrible app in a week and a terrible app in 6 months. So like time doesn't necessarily matter that much, but 3 months is narrow for something big. So is it more reasonable to say release like a stable 1.0 in 3 months, or should I attempt to just have a MVP built by that time?
Well, I think the main problem with not having it released is that I feel like anything else is too fuzzy. So like, I don't know what it not released. So to say have it as an MVP. So would you not release? So you wouldn't release the MVP. So what would happen after the MVP? And I don't know. So bearing in mind as well. So these are targets, and so you don't have to release it if you're not happy with it. But if that is the target is to be to the end. So I figure like an MVP versus something that's ready that you actually release. I don't feel like I know what a clear distinction is there. So I think either you have to make a clearer distinction or just say the goal is to release it. So I guess is the extra work of releasing it things like screenshots and general marketing and pre-stuff, or is it like, or is it that there's more actual work on the app to do between building it and releasing it?
Yeah, I think that's it. If I said build versus release, I would probably give myself license to not focus as cleanly on the features. And, when you focus on maybe the things that are fun to do, but not the actual most important pieces. So I am going to amend and I'm going to say, okay, my goal should be to release an iPhone game, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this mystical, perfect version in my head. It can be like a good first effort at this game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was just thinking maybe a compromise is released a beta, but that also feels a bit fuzzy because that's very, you can just create a new project, build an archive, and upload to test flight. So, but on the other hand, if it's like release a genuine beta or something like that, but then. I don't know. I'm talking you out of this now, having you just talked yourself into doing the release. So I'd say stick with the release.
I think we should stick with the release, and we'll get into it when I get into my task, but I will make sure the scope of this release is as narrow as it needs to be to accomplish that.
Yeah, sure.
Because the actual game itself, I'll do a quick one so I don't ramble for too long, but it's basically going to be a matching game. Like I'm not trying to build like a massive 3D adventurer. It's like there's a lot of them, like a lot of major properties like Star Wars style tokens or icons, colors on it, and you just have to like match 3 of them, and then those disappear from the board. And like you're supposed to make like combos and everything. It's very much like a Candy Crush or like a lot of other games, but the main mechanic is I have all of these 8-bit fantasy assets, so I'll actually have like animations at the bottom. So like when you match like 3 gold coins, maybe your character powers up a little, and when you match 3 arrows, your character will fire his bow at the enemy. So the idea being that I can create like a linear structure, like Angry Birds or any of a million games that have like 50 to 100 levels. I'll be able to build levels where you fight different enemies and things like that, and that's like the underpinning of both the structure of the game and the fact that in-app purchases can be centered around having lives or power-ups or cosmetic changes and things like that.
Okay. And so that all sounds good, makes sense, I think. So what is your for this week, what is your plan for that?
Gotcha. So my task for this week for that is to basically design the preliminary mock-ups. And that's where I think this will help. I know it's a little backwards, but it helps me this game. Like I understand the things you'd have to build, and as a user I'd understand what's going on, and that will kind of define the scope. So like if I make like the menu screen, that's something I'd have to build, et cetera, and then we can debate next week if I've added too much or too little.
Okay, so are you thinking like finished designs, or are you thinking more like wireframes, or
I'm thinking somewhere in between. I have we both use Sketch. I have those iOS toolkits, and I have my 8-bit assets. So I was probably going to do much more than wireframes, but maybe let's not say pixel perfect. So I will actually have like iOS assets, and I will have the graphics in there and drawn, but it's not a final version. It's like more like my first pass at visualizing the idea, but enough so that either of us could look at it and be like, oh, this is the game.
Okay. And so the main goal is scope and kind of and flow, and then but with you may as well make it close to what it's going to look like where what that is, and then the secondary goal is to have kind of realistic to use any images that you might use if you know what they are. but not to spend several hours choosing the perfect font or icon or
No,
stuff like that.
exactly. Just use like the default. Like I have like a couple of sketch program, there's sketch files that have like a bunch of the iOS assets. And so it's like drag and drop the iOS assets, drop in my fantasy things to give a full picture. So better than a wireframe, like you said. But yeah, it's mostly for scope, style, flow. And then yeah, like a secondary goal can be like hopefully having it give us a tone of what it would actually be.
Sure. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds like, yeah, that will set you up well for this 12-week challenge of getting this thing built.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to alternate goals or do you want me to go through all of mine?
Let's alternate.
Okay. What is your first goal then?
Okay, so my first goal is to get 5,000 mailing list subscribers within Progress. So basically what I've often so let me say again. So what I want to achieve is 5,000 mailing subscribers. I kind of feel like it's kind of money left on the table, not having people able to not really encouraging people to give me their email address, because I want to be able to, contact these people and sell them sell them things that I think will be useful, like scales that do your weighing automatically and stuff like that is one of the things I want to do. And like my wife writes a lot of health and fitness content. She really likes all this kind of stuff. And so it's trying to kind of synergize this thing and make it, give it another source of revenue. Potentially.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be an entry vector into all these other offerings that you basically already have, not quite, maybe not even ready to go, but like ready to kind of push out, and you just don't have that access to the customers yet.
Exactly, and then it's a virtuous circle as well. Like it can increase engagement in the app if we're emailing people about the app, and if they maybe would have forgotten about it, but then maybe they see the mail and stuff like that. So I feel it as being it's being very virtuous.
And in turn, even if people really like the products you're developing, it could even benefit both of us as the collective.
Yeah, exactly. And so the kind of 5,000 number is probably very ambitious, but we'll see. So I had, over the last 90 days, I had 20,000 downloads. So 5,000 would be 25%. So that is a lot, but on the other hand, I figure I'm going to aim high and see what happens. And I've already got, several thousand existing users and so on. So so that was where that came from. So I feel like it's ambitious, but not.
Question is, are you right? Okay, so are you trying to reach 5,000 total subscribers, or do you want 5,000 new subscribers?
I want 5,000 new subscribers. So
new subscribers. Okay, so fresh. Gotcha.
So I have about 500 at the moment. So against 5,000 doesn't make that big a difference, but my target is to get new subscribers.
Gotcha. So we're still talking roughly 400 subscribers per week. And what would be your mechanisms for would this be a coding goal? Would this be a marketing goal?
It's kind of all of the above. So my task for this week is similar to yours, to kind of do mock-ups and flesh it out in more detail. But I figure it's definitely going to be something that requires some coding. And so, but also it's kind of combined with marketing. So one of the ideas that I've got is to try the thing like you see on websites where you have like is it called a lead magnet, or like the kind of opt-in thing where it's like, join my mailing list and you'll get this guide to this, that, or the other.
Right.
And so I kind of want to have some piece of content which can be unlocked in exchange for an email address. So that's one thing, part of it. And then A/B testing different messages is another part.
Yeah. And
just thinking about different ways of asking for the email address and so on is another part.
Right. That's nice. I think this one's pretty standalone. This one sounds pretty great to me. I think most of the debate about this between you and me will come as we go. Like, after you have, like you said, done your task and you've designed like your preliminary mock-ups or however you want to implement it. It'll be like, okay, we're 3 weeks in. How are we doing? Do we need to ramp your goal up, down? Do you need to increase? And so I think most of this will come in like the permutations and not the goal itself. I think the goal is pretty solid.
Yeah, and so I think the only bit that if I was going to pick a weakness in it, I would say that I'm not going to release this app until iOS 11 now, and so that means I've got a few weeks before anything comes out. So possibly the 5,000 is too high, just because, like you said, I need 500 a week or whatever it is, but I'm not going to release it for several weeks. At which point it kind of starts to get a bit crazy. But I figure it's a target, and I'm gonna aim towards that. I can kind of cheat a bit by counting any ones that I get in the meantime.
Absolutely.
Anything I can do in the meantime.
Yeah, like I think it's if you have 500 right now, I think just saying 5,000, like 5,000 in MailChimp or whatever, is perfectly acceptable. But also, like, okay, so say it's 6 weeks or so until the iOS 11 version of Progress comes out. That still only means, like, instead of 400 new subscribers a week or whatever you do, 800. And if you have really targeted CTAs in the app or whatever, all the pieces you're going to do, and you've had all these weeks to plan them out, like execute your strategy, that might be totally fine.
Yeah, and I'm also quietly optimistic about getting a feature from Apple for iOS 11 as well, or at least some kind of minor thing. Like there's a new health field that particularly applies to my app, and the other apps don't really cover as much. And so, in the health app, you get, like, if you go into, I don't know if you do, but in the health app, if you go into any of the given measurements, they will say, hey, why don't you use this app? You can use this app to track this measurement. And there's a new measurement for waist circumference, which really fits in really well with what I'm doing. And so I figure the chances are strong of getting featured in there. Whether that would mean a lot of downloads or not, who knows? But, it's another thing counting in my favor.
Nice. I think that's a great one. And so your task, like we just kind of loosely said, is basically the same as mine, like kind of structure it, mock it up, figure out exactly how you're going to go about getting these extra mailing list subscribers.
Yeah, so I've written it as write stories, because that tends to be how I start, but it will probably involve some mocking up as well. But
Gotcha.
It's really think about a bunch of different options and then choose which ones I think are going to be the best. And just, so I've got these loose ideas, but it's like, so I know that I want to do this opt-in, but I don't know which screen I'm going to offer that from. And so it's stuff like that, thinking about how that's going to, different ideas for that. And probably it will be, or it might wind up being more in Sketch than in text, but I kind of default to text, I think.
That makes sense. Yeah, I do the same thing. Like I'll literally write stuff out like a text edit document, but then when I'm confident enough, I'll fire up Sketch and just mock it up.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
Awesome. Cool. I like it. Good start. All right. My other two goals are actually a bit smaller in scope and hopefully like more easily attainable targets that are maybe a little more within reach. So my next one is my iOS App Store revenue, in perpetuity has always been kind of in flux. Like there are some months I make $1 a day, and there are some months I make $20 a day. And since I have really only recently started really giving a majority of my attention to being an indie app developer, it's kind of like an untamed garden. And so what I kind of want to do as a goal is to reach a steady and stable $10 a day in App Store sales, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but like keeping, like the whole point is to keep the valleys from being valleys, basically. Like I want $10 steady a day and up, as to create like this like firm floor from which all my other endeavors can grow.
Okay, that sounds good. So my first question is, are we talking sales or profit?
Right. And just to keep it super simple, I was going to say sales. Like since my apps sell in at least a couple different regions like UK, Australia, Canada, the States, and they obviously vary a little bit here and there as taxes change. So let's just say like raw sales.
Okay. But I meant, if you spend any money on ads or anything, would you deduct?
Oh, I see. Let's say for argument's sake, I will not.
Okay. you
Like
will
unless it's substantial, like because my task for the week is to basically go in and either optimize or do completely new Apple search ad campaigns, because I've had Apple search ads since the beginning, but again, they're kind of just on rails, don't really do much. So I really want to, like, that's my first like attack into increasing my sales. You're right. It's like at some way I need to account for spending money to make money, but I also don't want to handicap myself, I guess, in those efforts, if that makes sense.
It does, but I don't know. I feel like I want to push back a little bit. I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I kind of
Okay.
trust that you're not going to spend $100 a day to make $10
Right.
a day in profit.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you spend $10 a day and make $10 in profit or $10 in sales, I don't know. I feel like it should be in margin rather than in
Well,
rather than
then how about what do you think is appropriate? Like, so we can just say, for argument's sake, since it's a 30% cut, if I make $10 a day in App Store sales, that is roughly $7 a day in profit for me. So should I just set a goal that says I should make sure that I'm not spending, say, more than $5 a day on any paid advertising? Otherwise, I would be undercutting my own profit.
no, I would change it to reach $10 a day in App Store profit.
Okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Like, just however, like, because I could spend $500 a day and make $510 and we're fine or whatever.
Yeah. So that would be fine.
I mean, that would be terrible. That would be really weird, but.
Well, yes and no. So I think that would be better than like trying to do, if you spend $5 a day and make $10 in sales. I don't know. I think you got to keep yourself a little bit honest.
Okay, I think you're right. Okay, I will switch it to App Store profit. You're right, because like a lot of the things I'm going to test, like some things can be just pure marketing, but there's going to be stuff where I'm spending money on advertising. And you're right. If there's no point if I can't like quantify the results.
Yeah, and I want to give. I've mentioned this before a few times, but I want to, if you will indulge me, I want to suggest adding another. It's kind of at the same time. So I think,
right.
So not from your goal, but from your task, where you said you're going to review your ads, your search ads. So I would look at what you can, or just at least bear in mind, have it as part of your goal for the task, to think about what you could change your title to be based on what you learn from this. Because my experience is that this can make a significant difference. And so if you find that tipping, if some particular word does really well, then I would strongly consider putting that to the front of your app's name. And because I think that's where most of the search ads value is in the kind of learning how to optimize your apps.
Okay, well then how search ad as part of try an experiment where I pivot my app titles to prioritize the kind of the search term first without it being lame. Like, for Piper, instead of being Piper dash travel, I can do travel tipping with Piper, task management with Takora, something like that. So it's not like one of those lame apps in the store.
Yeah. So I agree. Something like that. And I think putting it at the front makes a difference for the autocomplete. And so I would try it for that, and not be too. I mean, if you got 10x sales from putting that word at the front, then I don't know. I think you would overcome. People aren't any worse off, so you would feel fine with that. I think
you're totally right. And it's not like once you've downloaded the app, it's not going to say like travel tipping, blah 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 on the home screen. It's just going to say Piper. So it's not really sacrificing anything. It's just on that grab. You're right. So I will have that be part of my task. And then, I mean, this is tough because after a week, only a little bit of data will obviously be available, but we can see if it makes any immediate impact and whether we're seeing like a trend begin to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, I wouldn't say that you have to well, you can release something this week because it's up to you, but I would definitely have it as part of this work to have a new title. And you may as well, if you can, it won't take long to change the title and submit it. And then, like you say, you're collecting that data right away. And if it goes wrong or it becomes worse, you can quickly change it back as well. So
That's true. That's true. All
yeah,
right. Locked down.
yeah,
Perfect. All right.
nice.
What's your second one?
Okay, so my second goal is to create a generic tip jar and add it to World Time widget for, well, I put for widget themes here, but I think it's more the concept. I think what I wanted, well, there's two parts to this really. So one part is that kind of tip jars are kind of a thing that are happening more and more, and I think they
Yep.
suit some apps really well, and I think that
Yep.
they suit one of my apps really well as well. And so I want to build a kind of as generic as possible implementation of a tip jar. And so I want the features to be things like it syncs to iCloud, and I want it to be that it's kind of, you can have features attached to it so that if you have given some tip, then it is able to unlock some feature.
Right. Of course.
And so that's one part, and then the second part is to actually implement this this system into my World Time app, and to get that kind of get it done and see whether it makes a difference. And I think to replace, because my current thing is sort of like that, but not exactly in name, and so
Right.
I think I need to think it through, but either to add it as extra to what I've got or to totally replace what I've got with this
Right.
tip jar idea.
Okay, so my first comment is it's obviously a great idea. You and I have talked about the tip jar a bunch, and I want to use it very much. So you have kind of a two-part goal here. With the tip jar itself, is it going to be a component just for you, like you're going to build and realize this component that you can utilize in your apps, or is this something to make like Major Tom?
I'm not sure. So the primary goal is for it to be something I can use in World Time widget, because at the moment I don't have anything else off the top of my head that I will put it in. So really the goal is to implement this in World Time widget. But the secondary goal is to have in mind that it should be as reusable as possible, so that I can,
Gotcha.
so that I can use it in other apps, because I'm sure that I
Yeah.
can find other apps where I can put it.
That makes sense. Also, it keeps the goal much more narrow. Like if you're just like, you know what, I'm just adding it to World Time, and in the future, maybe a future goal, a future target would be to make it reusable, but that you don't need to add that extra complexity to yourself right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I've got a component as well as Major Tom, which I think is on GitHub maybe, but I mean, I'm not shouted about it. I don't think it's really anything to shout about, but on the other hand, it's there and I can reuse it if I want to.
Cool.
So I think I would build it as a separate component, but it would if there was a choice between doing a lot of extra work or making it tightly coupled to World Time, then it will be tightly coupled to World Time. But if it can be, it will be.
And so finally, does this goal have any kind of like performance attached to it, like how it actually performs, or is it literally just like get it built and in there?
That's a great question. So I didn't have so it would be built and in there, and I guess if it didn't work or I saw a big drop, then I would have to revert it out.
Well, I guess the question is this the target where at the end of the 12 weeks, you want to have this tip jar built in World Time, or will you have this in World Time in like 7 weeks, Yeah,
I see what you mean. So it should be built and optimized to the point that it's making more money than, so the underlying goal is to make more money than it does at the moment.
Right.
So it should be making a measurable amount more money than it is at the moment. So that kind of, like you said, the measurable bit is kind of, so I think it's got to be double. So it's got to be double. Once it's released, it should be double, because almost anything less than that, the variation is so different.
Right.
Well,
okay, so I guess like we have to have like, it doesn't necessarily need to be like in the target itself, but like in the back of your mind, then like we'll need to be analyzing this thing's performance quite close, right? Because if it's not like the nice tap in.
Yeah, I forgot to use my other keyboard. Sorry, you were cutting off and I didn't hear any of what you said. But
I was just making fun comments about the keyboard tapping.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. They're there. New MacBooks, loud
Yep.
keyboards. This is
I'm
this is the
trying
world we live in.
to even. I'm
No, it's gone again. Yeah, I lost some of that, but I think we'll plow on.
perfect.
So hit me with your last target.
Okay, so in trying to keep everything as diverse as possible, my final target focuses on our Patreon for the App Collective, and my goal or my target is to get to 20 Patreon backers.
Okay. And so how many are we on at the moment?
We are at 10 backers right now. So it is
Okay.
doubling our number of backers, not quite one backer per week, but close.
Okay. And do you have an idea in mind for how you're going to achieve this?
Well, that's kind of the rub, right? Because you and I have both talked a lot about how marketing is not necessarily either of our primary fortes. So I think what my target is about is each week I'm going to be trying out different marketing techniques that I have. Everything from my one for this week is doing a full spread across social media, so on our App Collective, Twitter, and reaching out to developers I know and posting and stuff like that, because all we really did when we first started it was reach out to our friends and family. So I kind of need to do a more, hey, this thing exists appeal across social media. And then I think each week my tasks will be like, read through Patreon's, guide on promoting your campaign. And do I do like a series of Google ads? Do I, what are these different techniques for getting it in front of eyeballs? Because people like you would, it's about finding us.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a really solid answer. So I think just measuring it and giving attention to it of itself is going to be, is going to be really valuable.
Exactly. And I have it as a smaller goal than maybe we would, a smaller target than we would otherwise do, simply because since marketing is not necessarily my high level of experience, I don't want to get discouraged by saying we should get to like 100 backers or anything like that. I want something I think I can actually achieve, but it's still a good target,
Yeah, sure. And maybe it's still a way to think of it is like, how would I get 100 people? Because if you aim to get 100 people and you get 10, so not to say to change the target, but to kind of, when you're thinking through, how am I going to do this? Think, if I was going to get 1,000 people, how would I do it? And then your conversion rates will be so low that, whereas if you try and get 10, then you will maybe only get one. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe if you're really focused on the, if you're really focused, maybe that isn't true. I don't know. I guess
no. But you're totally right though. If I enact strategies to get 1,000 backers for us, and we have a 1% conversion rate, we're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Yeah, focus on the big. Awesome. All right. What do you have for your final one?
Well, hang on. Before, I want to empty my brain of one other thing.
Sure.
Patreon thing. So, do we want to think about? We have one of the Patreon goals or one of the levels. I forget the terminology, but one of the levels is that we can do masterminds with people.
Yes.
I think that's something that we will be able to really focus on, and I don't know. That is something to keep in mind. Is, do we want to try and almost say it's a Patreon thing, but you get masterminds out of this, and we can do a mastermind with you, or something like that.
That's an excellent point, because the whole thing is obviously like most of the Patreon is backing fellow developers or our friends backing us. And then, we're going to do things like we're going to offer like this podcast up early on the Patreon. So consumers get a benefit out of it. But yeah, you're right. Like if I think I'm still going to do my social media goal for this weekend, because that's kind of getting it back up and puffed. But I think actually that's probably going to be my task for next week then, is focus on promoting it as a way to get developers in on a fellow mastermind.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent. A mastermind and or like some kind of community type thing. But I think the mastermind offers a lot of value.
I think you're right. Because like those things are expensive. So if like you could just back us for, I forget what we set the reward tier at, like $50 a month or something like that. That is a deal for them and would help us, like, keep building apps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, cool. Excellent.
Perfect. All right. Love it. Written down. What have you got for your last one?
Okay, so my last one is, again, something we talked about a little bit, but I want to release an anonymous moves style location tracking app. So could have worded that better, but basically something like Moves, which I don't know whether you've used, but Moves kind of started as a fitness kind of thing, but I've really used it as more of it's almost like a journal of, I can see where I've been at a particular point.
Yeah.
And so for digital nomads in particular, this is a useful thing. And I want to get that built before the end of the challenge. So
perfect.
So
again, I guess I have to challenge you with the same language that you challenged me at. Do you just want it built, or do you want it released in the App Store?
Definitely released. So
okay.
I think it should be released. Whether I should have, I don't think I want to set ton of targets for it. But
sure.
I want to get it built.
Yeah. No, this is an app we've talked about. Like, I definitely want. Like, I think just having it built in any capacity is cool, because as long as you're tracking the locations, you can enhance the features as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I realized that. Yeah. So exactly. So I want to put it out and see what kind of response it gets, and then I can build on it if I need to, or if it gets sufficient interest.
Right. Awesome. I think that's very clear. It nicely matches my iPhone game goal. So we have kind of like aligning targets. What is your task for this first week for it?
So it is, I actually didn't have one for this week. So I think I'm going to leave, we didn't say, but I think we did say our rules were going to be one task each week. So
you should have it. You don't have to necessarily start it, but you have to know what your next task is.
No, I think so my next task, it will be the same thing.
Oh, you got to start it? Okay.
It's got to be finished, man. It's got to be the task. So there was one thing we discussed, was whether or not we should have to have a task for every goal.
Right.
And we decided that we would. So it's going to be the same thing. So write stories for tracking apps. So
I think that makes sense, obviously, because just like with my app and everything, we have to give it some form.
Yeah.
And things.
Yeah, I agree. And so again, this is something that I've got rough ideas for, but but I haven't thought out in detail.
Perfect.
I'm messing up these labels. Right, I'll do them after. So So that was good. I was happy with that, I think.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think we're in a good spot. Like we have 6 solid targets that are discrete from one another. We have our tasks set up, and it'll really start to take form next week when we're talking about how we've like dipped our toes in each one and whether we need to like revise them as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. But so we'll meet this time next week with all of these tasks done.
Excellent. I love it. Can't wait.
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger.
Hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you've got any feedback, then please leave it in the comments below. And why not give us a like or a subscribe? You know you want to. See you next week. Bye.